The current release of Milvus we are working on is 0.11. In this release, we will change the way how Milvus loads the data into the memory. Here is the behavior before 0.11. Once the size of the data file exceeds the threshold of index file size, Milvus will trigger the index building procedure for this new file slice. The index file shown here is an IVF index. It consists of two parts. The first part is the collection of centroids. The number of centroids is defined by the index parameter nList. Every centroid has two pointers, which point to the beginning and the end of the inverted list. The second part is the index entries. To improve the I/O performance, we increase the data locality here. Vectors in the same inverted list are stored closely in this part. Milvus loads the index file into the memory with the same structure as it is on disk. This is how it will work in 0.11 for the IVF index without compression. For example, the IVF flat index. Since we will add the attribute support in 0.11, now for each embedding, there could be multiple files, including the file for vector data and the files for attributes. Each attribute will have its own data file. We can define up to 64 attributes for an embedding. These files are aligned through the offset. So once the size of the data file exceeds the threshold of index file size, Milvus will trigger the index building procedure for this new file slice. And the index file still consists of two parts. First is the centroid information. Second is the offset of the vectors instead of the vector data. When Milvus loads the data into the memory, now the memory data structure will be split into the index part and the data part. The index part contains the centroid information. The data part holds the actual vector data and the attributes. Milvus will reorder the data in memory to improve the I/O performance. Since the original data of vector are now cached in memory, when we invoke the getEntityById to retrieve the vector data, it will be much faster than before. This is how it will work in 0.11 for the IVF index with compression. For example, the IVF SQ index and the IVF PQ index. The difference is for the compressed index, we will store the encoded index vector data into the index file. And in the runtime memory, we won't cache the vector data. So the performance of the getEntityById will be the same as before. If you are interested by the Milvus project, please join our community. You can find the Milvus project in these channels. Thanks.